Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Main Street Universe, the show and network reminding you that the mysteries and possibilities of the universe are closer to Main Street than you may have ever imagined. And I'm starting a series of shows here. This is going to be a short intro podcast. Topic being biblical verses from a pagan perspective. And some of you, some of my pagan friends perhaps, and maybe even some of my Christian friends might be saying, well, why would you do that? Well, I, Daniel Michael, lived in a Christian mission for a year recently and healed and recovered from injuries and everything else. And we had church 4 times a day. That's right. And 5 just in case you needed it. The 5th one wasn't mandatory. Anyhow, I'm very thankful to the folks at the mission. And I healed in many ways physically and learned a lot about people and about faith itself. Today's verse that we'll be discussing is, well, I said verse, I actually mean book, and that will be Corinthians. So Corinthians 6:16, I'll start. What know ye not, that he which is joined to a harlot is one body, but that he who's joined unto the Lord is one spirit. Flee fornication. That is Corinthians 6:16 through 19 in part. It's a chunk of it. So Paul was writing a letter to the Christians in Corinth. Corinth, by the way, was the fortunate benefactor city in Greece. It had perfect trade routes almost. They were wealthy by ancient standards. In fact, one of the wealthiest cities in the ancient world. The land path known as the Isthmus was between Peloponnese and Attica, and they were between 2 strategic waterways and between the Aegean and the Ionian Sea. So they were fortunate enough to have been in a location for perfect trade, and the people there had wealth, or I guess a large portion of the population had wealth and had luxury of the day. And as well, their temples were known for, and here's what we get to, this will get to it, were known for having temple prostitutes. The goddess Aphrodite was a very prominent primary deity, a primary goddess for the city of Corinth, and it engaged in prostitution in its temples. In fact, the temple prostitutes, they say, would shave their heads and walk around the city of Corinth to attract temple goers. So Paul writes a letter because of the Christians that settled there. The Corinths were pretty nice people by, some of the ancient standards you see of some of these civilizations. They let Paul stay there and let the Christians attempt to grow their new religion there, and did so peacefully. It's just that they brought some of their old practices with them, and there was some sexual behavior that Paul did not approve of, and that he said Christ would not approve of amongst the new Christians. Of course, they bring some of the old pagan ways with them. We'll get to that debate in just a second. Now, here's the trick, because we're going to talk about the sex aspect. Paul also talked about the meat they were eating and where it came from. We're not going to get into any of that. And this will, as I said, be a short podcast. We're going to discuss the sex and sexual behavior and temple behavior. You see, the Corinthians having money and wealth, we're going back to the pagan Corinthians. I see it as they lost some of their sharpness. So many pagans might actually disagree with me on this, and that's perfectly fine and acceptable. But I think that prostitutes in the temple of Aphrodite is in fact an abomination. She's the goddess of cosmic love. Now, this isn't a judgment call. I just wouldn't engage in the practice. She's the goddess of cosmic love, and I think you cheapen it when you make it a economic exchange in the temple. In their personal lives, do what you want. But in the temple, many pagans would say that's not even being good pagans, because the Corinthians lost their sharpness. They became a bit soft. They lived in luxury of the day, and they lost that edge that, let's face it, sometimes makes people interesting. I know, as I'm rebuilding my entire life after injury and other things, I remember walking down the street, still, waiting to get a vehicle, all that kind of thing, and somebody's driving by an Acura or a Lexus. I'm thinking, well, the gods right now find me to be more interesting because I have to be sharp right now. If you are hurt and you're out of money and everything, you have to be laser sharp. Think of the dwarf in Game of Thrones. He didn't have physical advantages, and he wasn't a wizard who commanded dragons. He had to use his mind, and turns out to be one of the most interesting characters in that story, in my opinion. The hand dwarf there. Anyhow, so that is the lesson. To me, that is the pagan lesson to learn from Corinthians, is not allowing yourself to lose the fight, to lose the creativity, and to lose the sharpness in your heart. Because that's what really makes us. It's easy to get complacent when things are going well. I'm not saying be obnoxious. I'm just saying be passionate and live life fully. And don't be so easily taken by charlatans. That was another part of Paul's letter, is that some of the Christians were being taken by phony Christian new gurus. That was part of it too. And that certainly happens in the modern day, folks. You have modern cults, modern gurus. I certainly have observed and been aware and have known people who have been sucked into those sort of situations. So at the end of the day, stay strong within yourself is the modern pagan lesson of Corinthians. 1 Corinthians is what I am reading from today. And that is the lesson for us as modern pagans, is not to lose our sharpness, not to be taken on by temple charlatans and phony gurus. We must maintain our edge and our heart and our kindness and our passion, and be well balanced and strong from within. And trust me, that makes for a great, beautiful journey. Thank you.